Hello and welcome to the Metapod Podcast, the Pokemon podcast that revolves around the evolving meta. My name is Jake. I'll be doing the production for today's episode, and this is already take 2 of this episode of the Metapod Podcast because I forgot to turn on Sean's audio. So hopefully this episode goes well. But I do have Sean next to me, so I'm very hyped about this episode. Sean, how are you?
I'm good. I am in a different environment, if you will. Normally that means I'm traveling, but I am just upstairs because my basement is a construction nightmare. Suffice it to say that the bottom 2 feet of my wall no longer exist.
The bottom 2 feet?
Yep. They cut all the sheetrock and they got to replace it all, and everything has like plastic over it. It's awful. I hate it.
Oh, well, hopefully you come back soon because I don't know how long I can do this. But anyway, no, we'll manage because
somehow I managed by Michael Scott.
Yeah, I mean, we're still running better than the One Piece Trading Card Game National event in my personal opinion.
Yeah. Jake, let's get into that. Let's just dive right in.
So this isn't Pokemon, but I just wanted to, Sean brought it up to like talk about it, and so I'm like, yeah, let's talk about it. So for anyone who doesn't know, I've been getting into the One Piece trading card game a lot lately, and One Piece Nationals was in Los Angeles this past weekend, and living in Las Vegas, you know, that's only like a 4.5 hour drive. So just my partner and I went over there, and she actually got in, and we're not even going to talk about the sign-up system. I love RK9 Labs. They didn't use RK9 Labs, and I wish they did. But anyways, she got into the main event. I was just a spectator, which is fine by me. I love spectating events. There's still plenty to do, usually. But so we went over there, and so for anyone who doesn't know, in the main event, there is qualifications to get the first 2 rounds as a bye. Is that something they've done previously in Digimon? Do you know, Sean?
I believe last year's Digimon Nationals, there was like, if you XYZ, you get like a 1 round bye or something like that, maybe a 2 round. It might be the same thing. And do you know why they did it like that? You probably do. You've been playing One Piece TCG long enough. Well, but do you know why they did that?
I mean, I don't know exactly why. I know like if you won like previous tournaments and you had like these previous marks at these events, like you would be able to get that 2 round bye going in. It's almost like when Pokemon, you know, the day 1 skip,
day 2,
right? Like in Worlds, like you skip day 1 of Worlds and you just start on day 2. It was similar in that kind of sense where you like had an achievement and you got a reward for it kind of deal.
So I will say this is where the whole problem actually begins.
Yes.
The reason they did all of this is at the beginning of the One Piece season, the rule was, okay, it's going to be an invite to get to Nationals, right? Which, like, you know, whether or not you think that's gatekeeping, there's a lot of players. They need to manage how many people go to the event. And they said, okay, you got to make top 16 at a regional. And if there's enough people, maybe top 32. And between all the regionals, we'll have a good group of people to compete in this big event in LA. Sometime in October is what I heard. I don't know if it was a problem of the number of players, if the person that they had hired to organize the event, I assume they're using a third party, was like, we can't make enough money off it. Whatever the reason, they decided to open up the invite to Nationals to a registration. Like, anybody can register, but it's a total feels bad if you went to these regionals, got the placement to get your invite, and then everything, like the rug kind of gets pulled from under you, and it's just like, well, anybody can go. So the reason they did the 2 round bye, I think, was like a sorry for opening it up to everybody, even though we said it was going to be invite. But hey, you get two whole buys, so that's good. I mean, hey, like, don't get me wrong, like 2 free wins.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sure that's cool, but to me, that's where the whole will get. You know, you can regale us with the story, but that's where the whole problem sort of starts. Almost is in October.
So then we get to the event, right? And we sign up and we get there, and my partner, she's allowed to play round 1. And here's another kind of gripe before I get into the actual tournament. So Friday is just like a day early kind of check-in thing, right? In Pokemon, you can just kind of sign in, right? Get your stuff, spectator or player. Spectators in One Piece Nationals couldn't check in until 1 p.m. on Saturday. The event started at like 9:30. That was silly to me. I thought that was kind of weird, but apparently like you had to be like 18 or something like that. So like I thought of like minors first, and I was like, well, what if my 12-year-old kid wants in, but I want to be with them because I'm a parent, right? And there's a lot of people here. There could be some bad people. Apparently you had to be like 18. Anyways, that's not for here nor there. That was just a weird thing that I saw. They did not start round 1 on Saturday until like 12:30. They had like 3 hours worth of delays, and I wasn't in there on the inside, and it's just my partner kind of telling me kind of what's going on and what she's hearing and stuff like that as like the reasons. Apparently the 2-round bye thing really like screwed up the systems on trying to get the event started. And I'm trying to think, I'm like, I don't know, I've never seen Tom, right, or like any of the Pokemon organizer stuff. I've never heard of an event where you just get like buys because of certain achievements, only because of like there's an odd number of players, right? So apparently that just caused a huge debacle, and then people had to like recheck in or something like that. And like, I mean, they were slow on the rounds. Like once we got going and once round 1 got going, it's like 35-minute rounds. You enter your results on the website. You don't have to like turn in a sheet of paper or anything like that. You submit it through the website. They were averaging like an hour per round. Round 3, or I think round 1, I don't know if round 1 was a repair, but I do know that round 3 got repaired and round 5 got repaired. So the first round after the 2-round bye people got in, that had to get repaired. And then round 5, I believe I heard got a repair because I was in the venue. We were in the venue, honestly, like after the first round started because it started so late. But it was crazy. And then also they had, I think, planned 11 rounds. Mm-hmm. I don't know if it was 11 or 12. I'm pretty sure it was 11. But what I do know is they cut day 1 off after 10 rounds. They just
and they didn't tell people.
Because they started so late and because there was so much time between rounds, they cut it off at 10. And they said this several times over the intercom, I remember. Once we got like so far behind and stuff like that, they made a rule that after the overtime, right? Because in One Piece, it's like overtime 5 minutes or 3 extra turns. And so then it's determined like after that. After the 5-minute timer, if you don't submit the results within 60 seconds of the round ending in overtime, both players got a loss.
That's super harsh.
But they were running so far behind, and I could only stay until like day 1. Like we had to leave Saturday night because I had to work yesterday on Sunday. So. But we left at like, I think we left at like 6:30 or something like that. And we got home before day 1 ended. 4.5-5 hours. Like if I was a player playing in that for real and playing that a ton, that would have been the most like, it was terribly run in that aspect specifically. But then you talk about for spectators, right? And I'm not going to complain too much. Like I got my promo, right? I was able to get in the merch line. It was pretty good overall, but for side events, right? Side events are a huge deal for just players. I was really excited to try the Union Arena demo, right? Because I love Yeah, I mean, I love card games. I love anime. I don't think that's a secret on this podcast. So, like, I was excited to try the Union Arena demo decks and get a demo deck as well. Apparently, because the event started so late and people stood around so long, all of the Union Arena demo deck slots were filled before the spectators were able to get into the venue, right? So there's like the first problem. That really sucked. But when they did, at least for One Piece, I don't know exactly how they did it for like Digimon or Battle Spirit Saga or whatever. Once they let all the spectators in, they put out side events by a QR code. They were taping QR codes onto a board. And so you had people just mass struggling to like get like put their phones up and sign this code. And it wasn't on demand. It was a one-time side event per day, at least on Saturday. I don't know if they changed it too much on Sunday because I wasn't there. But like, I got lucky. I got into one of the side events, into the 3v3, and it was kind of fun, except for the fact that we were supposed to show up on one side, and then the judge moved us over to another side, and then another group doing another side event was like, hey, we're supposed to be here, and like, hey, the judge put us here. It was crazy. I don't think they were ready for the amount of people. There was also in the merch line, right? They were selling booster packs. And this was like a merch line. Like, you didn't have to have points from side events or anything like that. You didn't get like a free like $5 coupon in your spectator thing. This was like, hey, I'll buy this thing for $30. Apparently somewhere it said, and they said like over intercoms or whatever, or some sheet at the stand, like you could buy booster boxes, right? And they had booster boxes, but they didn't have booster boxes for sale. You could only, and I think the weird thing is that it was worded, you could buy either 5 packs, right, of a single set, or you could buy a sealed product, which I think at one point, like one of the workers said like, yeah, you could buy a booster box, but then when you get up to the front or whatever, and you're like, I'd like an OP05 booster box, they were like, no. So
yeah, that sounds like, yeah, it's bad communication and an inventory problem, right?
Just like
they sold the, yeah.
I mean, just like in general, I mean, don't get me wrong, I had fun. It was a great time with my friends and stuff. I'm glad I didn't have any high stakes. Shout out to my friend and local Josh, got top 16 at the event. He got an uncut sheet of OP05, which retails on eBay for like $30,000. So that's pretty sweet if he ever wants to sell it. But yeah, it made me really appreciate like NAIC, you know, having on-demand events, right? Just well-oiled machine, I guess you could call Pokemon, and there's some gripes and things like that, but like, man, Pokemon, it made me really appreciate Pokemon events.
Yeah, I mean, like, in general, like, I know that they used the pairing software they used was something called Best Coast Pairings, which, you know, other events have been run on it, but it just did not go well this tournament. And it does make you question things where you're just like, hey, like, the proven platforms for this are things like RK9. Like, why aren't we using a proven platform that can handle a multi-thousand-person event? Especially since, like, you know, Pokemon, this is another big thing. Pokemon doesn't run multiple different,
Yeah.
I guess they run the VGC, but like, you know, it's a little different.
They
like,
don't. So like Bandai ran Digimon, Battle Spirit Saga, Dragon Ball, and One Piece all at the same time. Yeah, all those card games at the same time. So I'm not gonna sit here and say like that was supposed to be easy or they should have been prepared for that, but like, I don't know. It just felt like they were somewhat underprepared, and like communication was not the strong result, I'll say.
Yeah. And I don't know if that comes down to, I don't know, did Bandai directly organize nationals, or Was there like a third party, like, you know,
I'm pretty sure it
Pack
was.
or Carta Magica or like one of those?
I'm pretty sure. I don't know exactly. I think there was a little bit of a mix. Like I think Bandai had
Mm-hmm.
heavy involvement,
Mm-hmm.
but I don't. I think there was another party that went into it because like one of the things as well is like European One Piece Nationals or European Bandai Card Games Fest, which is what the event was actually called. They streamed every round of One Piece
Yeah.
Nationals, but for the US Bandai Card Games Fest, the only thing that was streamed was the finals of all of the games. So it's like that's why I think that there's probably another organizer involved. But like there are other people like Eggman, who you know, Sean. He
Yeah.
ran the Digimon Nationals last year in terms of the stream, right?
Mm-hmm.
And he was kind of talking about it after news came out of like, you know, we're only streaming the finals or whatever. And he's like, it is not cheap, you know. So
Yeah.
I can't imagine
mean,
trying to run
it's
like 4 card games at the same time.
Yeah, no, I don't know. This is the weird thing to me where like I don't know what Bandai and the tournament organizer, what their budgets are like. I
Mm-hmm.
don't know. We don't know any of
We're
that,
assuming
right?
a lot of things.
But I'm gonna say this. These events they're never gonna be big money makers for any of these companies. That's just the reality, right? Like you will not make it isn't like going on tour as Taylor Swift where you make most of your money on merch sales and ticket sales or whatever. No, this is ultimately all of these tournaments are partly for the keeping your game competitive, but also it's basically promotional.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm like, if you're not going to stream it, how is this helping from a promotional perspective to run your national championships for your biggest market, the US, right?
Mm-hmm.
And Canada, North America, effectively. And to me, I work in marketing. I do not understand the budget choices that went into not streaming because like I agree with Eggman. It is expensive. You have to usually hire an outside third party company to do internet setup for these events. You obviously would need to hire people who know something about streaming and you know maybe even renting equipment. But, like to be frank, between Eggman and some of the other people out there who are like just really dedicated streamers,
Limitless.
oh, right, Limitless, but
Limitless
you've
literally
got,
brought into life European streams in Pokemon.
right, like if you are a company that maybe is struggling a little bit on budget or expertise in that field, the community members are more than happy to help. I guarantee you there would have been 2 or 3 streamers for each Bandai card game that would have been chuffed to just be like, hey, give me a reasonable budget, fly me out there, but then I will bring some of my equipment and I will bring the expertise of how to set things up. And so it's just, we're getting deep into it. We can get into Pokemon now, I guess, but like it's wild to me that they wouldn't stream it because it is a promotional event at the end of the day. And it's just like, what are you doing?
I
What are
mean,
you doing?
yeah, I mean, again, there's a lot of stuff that we don't know, but I hope they learned a lot of things from this. So then
I'm
next
sure
year,
they learned a lot.
right? Next year at the end of January when they do this, I hope it is a much more pleasant event because I'm sure I would have had a good time, you know, if it didn't. I mean, I did have a fun time. I would go again. But yeah, anyways, we're going to talk about Pokemon stuff now. There were some news that came out lately in the Pokemon trading card game. The first one that we're going to talk about is going back to the Van Gogh Museum. So if you remember the spam of Van Gogh promos, the Pikachu with the gray felt hat, the Eevee with the sun hat or whatever, I don't know.
Yeah.
There's some news coming around to that as well as the Van Gogh Museum fired several employees for embezzling during the collaboration, Sean. So, that, I mean, one fired employee embezzled a box of Pikachu promo cards. Other employees gave insider information to scalpers so then they know when stuff would be in stock and just... My goodness, because a lot of the merch stuff was filed random, right? Like a lot of the items were just randomly coming into the store, so like giving the insider information is not good. So if if you really thought, and you can read this article over on PokeBeach, if you really thought that it was already bad, like when I think we showed the video of people like literally like tackling each other and like in the Van Gogh Museum and whatnot. If you thought that was bad, it's just continued to get worse. And it makes me afraid because I feel like, I don't know, like how much does Pokemon own of this?
It's a weird one. Yeah, because it is a collaboration with the Van Gogh Museum.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. It's awkward, right? Because like Pokemon, they don't run museums, right? Like they don't. Pokemon doesn't run the retail side of this museum. Sure, they might run Pokemon centers in Japan and maybe a couple in Europe, but for the most part, they're like, hey, this is kind of, we have to trust our partners in this. We will provide you with what we can hope is enough inventory. We can give you some procedures, some advice, but other than that, you got to then rely on the employees of the museum to properly, distribute them. And I think it's like this awkward, like perfect storm of way too much hype for this product. Like, it's cool, don't get me wrong.
No, in my opinion, it's fantastic, and I would have loved to get some of this stuff, like as a collector and a Pokemon fan. Like, this is so cool.
It's almost like if Pokemon wants to do this type of event though outside of Japan, because here's the reality. Promos like this do happen in Japan, not infrequently.
But stamps, you remember like when in the last like year or two they did like the stamps with the Cramorant on it?
Exactly, yeah, with the postal service, I think.
Yes.
The Japanese postal service. Yeah. So they've done these. I'm sure there's some differences, but I would argue that whether it is Japanese business etiquette that's a little different, or who knows? Maybe Pokemon does have more control when it's in their home country as well. Mm-hmm. They do have Pokemon centers, so maybe that helps with the parts. But it feels like if they were going to do this outside of Japan from now on, they almost need to send like one or two facilitators to any location that does giveaways to effectively watch the inventory. Like their job is to manage the Pokemon side, like literally babysit. Yeah. Because ultimately, what happened is people who are working at the museum were like, "Well, I've never had this issue before, but I can always put product aside, alert friends of mine or people that I know to when stuff might be on sale." Which, like, all of that individually, like, there are some things that are truly illegal, like people just like swiping boxes of product and stealing them. Some of the other stuff, whether or not you agree with it, some of the other stuff is like stuff that employees working at a lot of companies will do all the time, which is set product aside for their friends. Or, if you're going in early, a perk, quote unquote, a perk of like being an employee at lots of different places is that like you can buy something before it's officially launched to the public. Like before the store opens, if you want, or like one or two of the items, you could just buy it for yourself, and it's whatever. But in a serious situation like this, when there's going to be so much demand and people are just incentivized to break the rules, basically.
So you didn't see me, but when you brought up the point that like employees at stores are going to do it anyway, I like raised my hand. Like a kid in class, but I realized that Shauna actually can't see me as we're doing this. So it was just to my own embarrassment. But anyways, I was going to mention that like when I worked at Barnes & Noble, like before I like got into sports after graduation, I actually did that. Like just getting books for myself, like on like a break or something like that, we just put it like if I was like restocking a shelf and I saw that there was a manga that I wanted that released like a week early, right, and was gonna go on the shelf, I like got it, put it up at the front, and I just paid for it after my shift, and that was completely fine, with our people. Like if there was something in back that I saw like right before my shift when I was clocking in, like I could basically like put that on hold at the front of the register for after my like, and I'm sure I could have done it too, like if I had friends back home like say like, hey, this is in stock today, like I'll hold one for you. Like I mean, it's at least over there it was fine. Now I don't know if upper management would say it was fine, but for my manager it was fine. Anyways, I wonder if like Pokemon actually genuinely does not care. Like overall. Like think about it. Like they give the stuff, and as long as they like the Van Gogh Museum probably paid something, right, in this collaboration?
That's an interesting one.
Because
I
like
would almost guess that Pokemon
they give the
did
promos.
it.
What does it matter, right? Like the employees were stealing it. That's not Pokemon's problem, right? Like
I
they
don't
didn't
know
have
how
the security when the Van Gogh stuff was released. They didn't have the security to get the masses of people. That's not Pokemon's problem, right? They got the
I don't
bag.
know if I don't know if the museum probably pays anything, honestly, because the museum is offering space, offering employees, like giving them. It may be that like there is a revenue share of all the products sold, and that's part of the agreement. Um, so Pokemon does actually want the product being sold because that affects their bottom line.
Yeah,
But
that's true.
look, I mean, in the grand scheme of things, for the Pokemon franchise, this is a blip on the radar sales wise.
Yeah,
But I think that I think that Pokemon would actually care quite a bit because it's a reputation problem.
it is a PR
Like,
thing. That is
yeah,
true.
it's great that people want your stuff, but if the headlines are Pokemon is, embattled with scalping and fraud and embezzlement, like
Well,
by their
guess what?
partners,
Yeah,
that's
I
not a
mean,
good look.
they definitely are at times. So,
Yeah. So,
did you ever get one of
but
those
yeah.
Pikachu with the gray felt hat?
No,
Me
no,
either.
but I'm in the process of maybe planning a trip to Amsterdam in the next 6 months to a year. I don't know.
There we
So
go. Maybe get one.
maybe I'll snag one while I'm there. I know they probably won't be at the museum anymore, but like I feel like proximity wise, some stores got to have them, right?
Mm-hmm. And if you want free stuff as well, but maybe don't want to travel across the pond, Pokemon Day 2024 is coming soon on Tuesday, February 27th, and there will be stuff coming to Pokemon leagues, including exclusive merchandise, according to PokeBeach.com. There will be Pokemon Center figures, Go TCG items, stamp promo cards that will be previously unreleased, and new promo dice. Also, a TCG demo kit providing merchandise to leagues to give out to fans. So leagues are going to be hosting these Pokemon Day invites, and that can be literally anything. It can be like giveaways on raffles, how to play sessions, actual tournaments, like probably a lot of us are used to, or like just a friendly like meetup, and just playing and stuff. The point of it is to just use to give to people in some form or fashion as prizing or raffles or whatever, not to sell. And there's still not a lot that is out in terms of exactly what it looks like. It's just pretty much the stuff that we listed there. But I mean, Pokemon Day every single year is a lot of fun. Sean and I have been through a couple Pokemon days throughout the years of the podcast. So it's just a really nice time. It's really, really cool. So mark that on your calendars. February 27th. I would assume that doesn't mean that like your league has to meet on Tuesday, February 27th, right? It's probably going to be one of those things that like they can start giving it away on February 27th and just go until like supplies last, per se, whenever you meet up and stuff. But yeah, ask your local judges, your local organizers, stuff like that, I guess.
Yep.
Don't pester
That should
them.
be cool. I will say there was one part of the email I was forwarded the email by a friend.
Oh.
And the Go TCG items, like the Poke Beach, who we're using, shout out to them. They are writing this, trying to be verbatim, like what was said in there. But me and the organizer that I know are like, what the hell is it? What the heck's a Go TCG item?
Go TCG item. It's like any of the Pokemon Go promotion stuff. Like the professor's research that had the code on it?
Sure, but I want to know, like, is it Pokemon Go set stuff for the TCG? It just feels like a weird, I don't know, who knows what it is.
The wording is
maybe
weird.
It's that. Yeah, the wording, I'm like, Go TCG item, unless you're referring to the Pokemon Go set, which I mean, you could be, but it's a little old now, right? It's like a year old or something like
Is it
that.
rotating? Is Pokestop rotating?
No, but it's a year. I think Pokemon Go set came out last year, I want to say.
Oh, that would be
So it wouldn't be rotating. But
no, because Go is F. I just looked it up for all
yeah.
the visual people that listen to the podcast on YouTube and whatnot, or even Spotify video, I think, is another one where the audio
Okay.
or the video comes up. But anyways, yeah, expect
It's a
to
weird wording.
hopefully see this coming soon to your Pokemon leagues. I hope it comes to ours as well. I know sometimes the shipping on things like this can be a little bit difficult and leagues get delayed and stuff like that, or maybe they just don't get them at all. But anyways, that'll be cool. Hopefully we'll start seeing some pictures and things like that soon, because the end of January is literally like a couple days and we'll be moving into February soon. So
Yep. Jake, are we ready to talk about Liverpool?
we're going to talk about Liverpool Regionals, the latest TCG major to happen. And a lot of things went down, another tournament in this format. And so first, we're going to talk about the deck analysis by day. Sean has no idea about this. So this will be kind of a fun guessing game for me and the audience. Unless you're an audio only, then I guess you don't really know either. No shame in that. But anyway, Sean, what do you think was the most played deck in day one of Liverpool?
Charizard.
Yep, you're right. Do you have a what is it? Bonus? Yeah, bonus percentage award.
Oh man, I'm gonna go Charizard day one at 19%.
Ooh, you're kind of close. 17% of day
Okay.
one. So a little bit more even across the board than Sean was kind of anticipating. Number 2 deck, Sean, what do you think?
I'm gonna go. Ooh, do I go popular or good? Probably Giratina V-Star.
You are close. Giratina
Okay.
is actually third, tied with the number 2 deck, just a couple less. If you round it up, they're even percentage, but
I would say maybe if the second place then might be. Ooh, I wonder if it is Roaring Moon.
no, Roaring Moon was
Okay.
fourth at 9%, tied with Lost Box at what is that? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5th place overall.
Okay, well, then if it's Lost Box, Guardy would be second then, right?
Guardy is not in the top 6 most popular decks of Liverpool.
What the heck is number 2? Is it Miraidon or Mew? Is it Miraidon or Mew? What is it? What's left?
Miraidon was the second most popular deck at 12%. Mew was the 6th place. So Charizard 17, Miraidon 12, Giratina 12, Roaring Moon 9, Lost Zone Box, which is kind of surprising that that's 9 because that can be like a conglomeration of all other things like Lost Zone Box, right? So they separated Giratina V-Star and pretty much every other Lost Box deck, but Mew VMAX being 8. And then going into day 2, the conversions basically. Sean, what was the number 1 deck in day 2? There were 25 of them.
Well, probably the number 1 deck in day 2 was still Charizard.
It
in terms
was.
of total volume, but I don't know about conversion percentage.
Oh, I don't know about exact conversion percentage, but what I meant to say was there are still 17%. Yeah, is the most represented deck. Second place, Sean, is your original guess for day 1, Giratina V-Star at 15%. But your third deck here was the one that you were surprised was left off. Gardevoir being 11% of day 2. So again, I don't have the exact conversion rate numbers, but not being in the top 6 most popular decks of day 1, but being third overall with an over 10% meta share in day 2 means that Gardevoir had a pretty good conversion rate probably compared to a lot of the other meta decks. Yeah. If I had to take a guess.
Yeah, I think Gardevoir has had like a really weird time in the meta between Giratina and Lost Box, and I don't know, it just feels like a deck that it's not a bad deck, but it just kind of has fluctuated in terms of popularity and how good it is tournament to tournament. I will say, This is interesting though that it's did so well at this event because I think when Paldean Fates becomes legal, there is the stadium Moonlight Hill, I think it is, or something like
Yes.
that. That will make Gardevoir better, and then following up on that, when rotation happens, yes, Gardevoir loses some key pieces. However, it will also be the rotation. Actually, so we could maybe get into some new cards in a second, but like Path to the Peak is rotating.
Mm-hmm.
But was there a new stadium that got announced? A
Um,
reprint?
I can't remember off the top of my head. I know like Mew VMAX, and we don't have like a topic for this today, but like in China, Mew VMAX is going to push past rotation. So a lot of people were memeing about, if you are sad that Mew VMAX is rotating, just go to China and then you can play Mew VMAX for like a year longer. And while Sean is looking this up, actually, we have a quick update about our Paldean Fates set review.
Oh, yeah.
Mr. Mime Jr. doesn't specify the active Pokemon, so opponents can just use utility Pokemon on the bench. So there goes all of my hype for old Mime Jr. I was so excited about that card, and now it's kind of a bad card now, actually.
Yep.
Yeah,
Yep.
it's actually a really bad card.
So here, I don't know if this is real, and maybe I dreamed it, and that's a really weird statement to say. But for some reason, Jake, I have in my mind that Silent Lab is getting a reprint.
That's probably just like a rumor. I don't know. I feel like I would have heard about that.
Yeah, I would have thought so too. I don't know where it's coming from in my brain that yeah, so I don't know. Maybe I literally dreamed that.
Sean literally dreams of playing Expanded and bringing Expanded into the standard format. Confirmed here on the Metapod podcast, episode number whatever, 171, I think it is.
Okay, so assuming that Path to the Peak rotates and there hasn't been something announced that I'm absolutely whiffing on, I think Gardevoir, look for it to continue getting better, regardless of the cards that it loses. Like, I'm not to take away, the cards that it loses are big, but I think Gardevoir stonks are on the up now, Jake. That's my gut.
If you want to know the stonks on the rest of the decks in terms of what did well, what your deck list could potentially look like from here on out in Liverpool, Mew Genesect actually won Liverpool Regionals, the deck that never dies except for rotation. So
yeah, that's what's gonna kill it.
Sean, this Mew VMAX deck is pretty much similar to every other Mew VMAX deck that we've talked about, except there is Fusion Strike Energies back again in this deck. I feel like we're always like, every time we talk about Mew VMAX, it's always back and forth on the Fusion Strike Energies. Is definitely a meta call, right? The Fusion Strike Energies, just two of them though, to be able to go in with Alyssa Sparkle. And if you think, right, oh, there's Fusion Strike Energies right in this deck, so Meloetta is in here. There is no Meloetta in this winning list, mostly because your Meloetta could only hit like a base 140, right, with the Fusion Strike Energies if both of them are attached due to the Alyssa Sparkle. And so it's not really worth it. In a lot of cases, It's really just to stop like Spiritomb and things like that. That's the main reason I think why they have these Fusion Strike Energies, and also just to kind of accelerate for some various reasons if the game plan says.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, look, I'm sure there's lots of reasons. I'm not a Mew VMAX expert. But yeah, you're right. It's weird seeing a Fusion Strike deck that doesn't play Meloetta, because it's like, well, isn't that the benefit? But it also only plays one Alyssa Sparkle in this list as well. So it's like, very situational. But yeah, interesting list.
Box of Disasters, still a new Mew staple since I think Worlds, right? That was when we first saw it. I think so. Box of Disasters, still a 2 of in the list. Love that card. I think that's a really, really cool card. But the Lost Zone Giratina did get second. That's the deck that's been on the rise as of late. I would say the popular one of choice the last month or so. Getting second overall, Brent Tonneson. Oh, also the winner was Fabrizio Igna Silva from Peru. So wanted to shout that out first since I said Brent's name. Because, well, he did win. But anyways, Brent's list as well of Giratina Lost Box, I feel like is definitely, like, we talked about Mew kind of being like a standard list. This feels like the standard Giratina Lost Box list, you know?
Yeah. Yep. It is very standard. I mean, the game plan is pretty straightforward. That's like the benefit of Giratina is that, like, you've got some single prize attackers if you need them. You got Giratina, and then the rest of it is get your game plan going and disrupt your opponent with Path to the Peak and Roxanne, you know, and call it a day from there, right? Once you're set up, you really don't need all that much.
Playing water energies as well. I know that's kind of something that, like, this list playing 3 water energies. I know that's like in the one thing of Giratina VMAX, that's like the on and off thing that people talk about is how many basic water energies do you play. So Brent going in with 3, perfect for the Radiant Greninja or just the extra energy that you use to retreat or use off Giratina V-Star's Lost Impact attack. Right, to be able to hit, but Path to the Peak, Roxanne, still a strong variant, Sean.
Yeah. It's just Path to the Peak is such a it's needed in the format, but like I will personally be excited to see it rotate, even if it's just for a set or two, before we get that kind of effect again, because I think it'll be fun to see a lot of decks that, you know, you can kind of get Path, Roxanne, or Judged, or Iono just kind of out of the game entirely. And so much of Pokemon's game plan right now, like, relies on abilities. Like, all the cards they're printing, they all have abilities, it feels like. So, it will be interesting to see a world without Path.
Sean, do you have another deck that you want to talk about in this one before we continue?
Yeah. Well, I mean, not in the top list, to be honest. Like, there's the Lost Box decks, which there's sort of a Lost counter sort of box thing. There's like a Lost Sablezard list that also plays Mawile and Roaring Moon.
The third place list.
Yep, Brennan Kammerman, his list. It's a Lost Box deck, but they sprinkled in Roaring Moon and, you know, a Mawile as well to trap things in the active. And then you've also got Magnus Peterson's list, which is, you know, I think closer to maybe what Tord played a few regionals ago, that has like Iron Hands and Roaring Moon. So seeing like Lost Box sort of take shape in a couple of different ways, but people are almost converging around the fact that Roaring Moon in Lost Box is probably a good thing in general, because especially if Charizard is so popular, it does feel like you have, you know, 1 or 2 options to get around that, and it's either instantly knock them out with Roaring Moon or TM Devolution. Like, those are kind of your 2 choices if you're playing Lost Box against Zard.
I do want to say, in terms of the third place Lost Box list, you mentioned the Mawile, right? Tempting Trap, not allowing the defending Pokemon to retreat. But what it also says on there, right, alongside the can't retreat, is the defending Pokemon takes 90 more damage. Right, that's another big thing that I want to hit on this Mawile, and how it's, you know, we kind of see it every so often, because if you don't get that Pokemon out of the active, right, Radiant Charizard is doing 340 damage. Spin Innocently is doing 200 damage. Even the Roaring Moon Calamity Storm does 310 damage. So yeah, it's really, really good for that, you know, preventing the retreat and really just trying to, what am I trying to say? Force your opponent to utilize resources such as escape rope, switch card, all that stuff. But it's a little cheeky in some aspects as well, because you're also playing the Manaphy. So think about potentially using a Oh no, they're not playing any water energies. I was gonna say using Rain Splash for 110, KOing a Cramorant.
Can you imagine?
That would be definitely a treat in my opinion. So
Yeah, yeah. Hey, throw a what is it? Luminous energy that we have now. Throw a luminous energy in there. Just
yeah,
a rain
just do
splash
it.
for 110.
Yeah, you can use
it's
it
like
on a bunch of your
Cramorant at
dudes.
home.
Yeah, easy.
um, yeah. So I wanted to call out, and I also just call out in general. It seems like Charizard EX
hmm
has sort of two deck cards that you can play. Maybe you play both of them, but I'll just call it out. Justified Gloves, which if you don't know what that card does, I don't blame you. It's a tool that says your Pokemon's attacks do 30 more damage to your opponent's dark type Pokemon. So in the mirror, a great card for Charizard. Your opponent can be at 2 prizes, thinking that they're safe from a one-hit knockout. Throw the Justified Gloves on there. Hey, you're going from 300 to 330. Job's done, right? But I also think the important one for anybody out there playing Zard, playing against Zard, TM Devolution is absolutely devastating to Charizard. If your opponent just really goes ham, uses all their rare candy, it's like, I got the best board in the world. If you TM Devolution at the right moment, rip. That's basically it.
I remember because before, what was it, Portland? I was playing with a friend who was going to Portland, and I was playing Charizard, and he was playing TM Devolution, and he got off the TM Devolution turn after, I used a couple rare candies for, like, Pidgeot and Charizard, and I was like, well, all my Pokemon are dead. I can't really evolve. So it's definitely a strong card that it is I think it's also kind of it might not be something that turns it to a favorable matchup, right? If you're playing a deck that is super unfavorable to Charizard, but it may be something that may not be able to make it winnable. I mean, it's winnable, right? But it's not like it doesn't go from 30-70 to Charizard's favor to 70-30 your favor. It's not like that severe, but it could make it more towards like 50-50 at times.
I mean, look, just think about Lost Box, right?
Mm-hmm.
Lost Box Zard, before TM Devolution was printed, it's a problem. I don't know if Lost Box is playing TM Devolution, but like it's a thought of if you got Sableye out, you know that the Charmanders are, I think, 60, maybe 70 HP. Same with Pidgey. Maybe you get to 60, 70 at max, but like you can easily spread around with a couple of attacks, enough damage counters that, you TM Devolution, and then all of those Pokemon, once they're devolved, they just instantly die. You might take 3 prizes, 4 prizes in a perfect world. It takes you 3 turns of 2 Sableyes and then the TM Devolution attack, but after that, your opponent may not be able to respond at all for at least a turn, maybe the rest of the game. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, I think to your point, like, you always have to find the card in the right turn, which is not guaranteed, but it can turn a matchup that is heavily unfavored into something that, like, maybe it swings the tide completely if you get it at the right moment.
It's definitely one of those win more card, or well, no, actually, I take that back. It's not a win more card. I feel like win more card is like
for a certain deck.
Yeah, definitely helps in a matchup like that. But Sean, there was one deck that took the storm on Twitter and social media. I know you're not on Twitter, but you told me that you wanted to talk about this deck. So I'm gonna pretend like you were on Twitter when you asked me this. There was a Arceus deck that really made the rounds. I think 2 of them made like top 50. The top one being like 30th or something like that. Sean, what was the binder drop partner Pokemon that was with Arceus in this one?
I mean, there's a couple, but like the big one, literally, is Rayquaza VMAX. So, I would argue that Rayquaza has been, broadly speaking, a not as exciting VMAX as everybody maybe anticipated.
Hmm.
But if you don't remember what Rayquaza VMAX does, I'll remind you. It's huge, 320 HP, Dragon type. It does give up 3 prizes, so a little different in terms of comparing it to EXs, but
No
it
weakness
has
or
an ability.
resistance.
Oh yeah, no weakness or resistance, right? But it's just straight up 320, so it's going to be. You really have to do a lot of work to get this one. But it does have an ability. Once during your turn, you can discard your hand and draw 3. Hey, not something to scoff at. Sometimes that's what you need. But then you also have its attack, Max Burst, for a fire and a lightning. You do 20 plus, and then you can discard any amount of basic fire or any amount of basic lightning. And it does 80 damage for each card you discarded in this way. So this deck,
Specifically, energy from this Pokemon. It's not like
right, it has to be on Rayquaza.
yeah, it's not like Raichu where it could be anywhere on the field. It has to be on this specific VMAX.
So the benefit here is, in terms of that being your main attacking partner, it's a Pokemon V. So Arceus's attack actually powers it up, right? And if you discard, what is that, like 3 energy from that, you're going to do 260. 4 energy, you're knocking out anything in the format because you're doing 340 damage. That's huge. And then, on top of that, you have a couple of partners here. You have Armor Rouge. So Armor Rouge allows you to, as often as you like during your turn, move a fire from a bench to an active. So, one of the downsides of Rayquaza VMAX is you can't use it with Magma Basin because it is not a fire type. But Armor Rouge says, okay, well, put the energy on me or somewhere else, or on Radiant Heatran, which we'll talk about in a second, and then you can just move it straight onto Rayquaza later. It's fine.
Mm-hmm. Or a different Pokemon that's in here, Sean. Another binder drop Pokemon, Delphox. I love this Pokemon.
Yeah.
I think this is a cool one.
Yep. Yeah, this is I was playing around with Delphox in was it early Charizard builds that I was playing with?
Yeah, I think people were doing it in like early Charizard.
Because it's interesting because fire decks today don't usually have as much access to. You don't think about them as having bench attackers, right? Mm-hmm. So people, if they're playing against you, they're not going to necessarily drop their Manaphy. Like most decks are playing Manaphy, but they see you starting an Arceus and they don't really know what's going on in this deck. But you're just kind of like, oh, well, I don't have to worry about bench damage. And then this Delphox, for 3 fire energy, does 120, but you put 2 energy attached into the Lost Zone, and it does 120 to one of the bench Pokemon too. So it's like a stronger version of Radiant Greninja, basically.
Well, I would say a bigger 90, Pokemon. 90, I don't know. This is definitely not a stronger Pokemon. I don't.
No, but I mean the attack. The attack is a stronger version, right? You're doing 120, 120 instead of 90, 90.
I mean, I guess, but like, I don't know, the flexibility of 90, 90 anywhere. It doesn't have to be on the active. It can be like 2 bench Pokemon. I think is really, really cool. But to your point, it is a pretty good attack if you can get it off, especially after accelerating. The energies on it through like Armor Rouge and Magma Basin, things like that. And then Radiant Heatran. This is a Radiant Pokemon that I don't think we've ever seen top regionals. Sean, what does this guy do?
It has an attack for 3 energy, 1 fire and 2 colorless. Raging Blast. It does 70 for each damage counter on this Pokemon, which I think the reason you rarely see this is like, well, how the heck am I getting that much damage on this Pokemon without it dying, basically? Because usually you're like, okay, the way to get damage on it is somebody attacks into it. But because you're playing the Armor Rouge Magma Basin, this is kind of your damage sink for all of those Magma Basins. So you put 2 damage counters on this, and then you move that energy. Another 2 on another turn, move that energy. You kind of take a turn or 2, I would say, to build it up with the Magma Basin. But once you get 4 damage counters on this, you're doing 280. So that's amazing, in terms of it can knock out Giratina V-Stars. You get 1 more damage. You somehow manage to get 5 onto this guy or more, and you're doing 350. You knock out anything in the format. So interesting that they chose to use the Radiant Heatran, I think, over Radiant Zard, but the Magma Basin combo, I guess, makes sense.
Mm-hmm. I agree. I mean, I think it does make a little bit of sense alongside the Magma Basin, because you think about 70, like 70 can hit some really good numbers, right? Like, if you do Magma Basin one time, you can knock out a Comfey, right? Because that'll do 140 damage. You know, the 70 to 210, right? You Magma Basin on it twice, that can knock out some Vs. Like, it's a really, really interesting.
If you Magma Basin on it twice, you're knocking out V stars.
Oh, yeah. 280.
Damage.
I'm sorry. Yeah. So you can knock out an opposing Arceus V-Star, you know, some EXs as well. I think Pidgeot has 280. So, like, there's some flexibility around this card, and it definitely synergizes well with the Magma Basin in this kind of deck. I don't know if you do it without Armor Rouge, though.
No, yeah, I think without Armor Rouge, this is bad. This is straight up
He's
bad.
just you'd rather play Radiant Charizard, but
yeah, but like, there's also a world in which, because your Rayquaza VMAX is so big that and even your Arceus V-Star, to be frank, both those Pokemon are so big that they may not get knocked out in one hit. I almost wonder if somebody wants to play with the deck. Look, I am not an expert on this deck, but you know the card Damage Pump?
yes, it's played in Zoroark V-Star.
Yeah, so it doesn't allow you to move 2 damage counters from one of your Pokemon to another, or the active, or something like that.
Yeah, it's one to another. I don't think you can do like one damage counter here and 1 damage counter there. I think it has to be on the same Pokemon, but yes.
But like Damage Pump, because you have such big Pokemon that are unlikely to get knocked out in one hit, I also think this is a world where like a card like Damage Pump could also see play. I don't know. Maybe that's bad. Maybe the deck needs everything that it has because it's already weird enough.
Yeah, but I mean, I'm trying to look, and like you have Drapion V, which can very much, it's like the Devolution, right? It can very much sway your Mew VMAX matchup. You've got some supporters in there, some energies, and a lot of the other stuff is just like, I mean, there's very few items in here. There's 4 Nest Ball, 4 Ultra Ball, 1 Switch, 1 Rope, 1 Pal Pad, and that's it. Yeah. Just literally, what is it, 11 items?
Yeah, I mean, that's actually quite low. It's surprising. Yeah, I mean, I'm actually a little surprised. I'm trying to think of how you would find it. So the lightning energy, I guess Arceus V-Star gets the lightning energy onto your Rayquaza.
Mm-hmm.
That's really the key.
That's really the point. I mean, every game you want to start Arceus V, turn 1, attach energy, and then turn 2, Arceus V-Star, Starbirth for whatever you need, and then just go from there.
Yeah, that's fair. Definitely an interesting deck. One that I think, people were surprised when they saw this on stream. Unfortunately, the stream match I saw, the person who was running this deck, it was 1 win away from, like, I think top cut or something. Mm-hmm. And the deck, as Pokemon decks do sometimes, it was just not his friend.
As usually when the fun decks get on stream, the one time.
That's just how it goes. But I could see this being, honestly, like, this could be a kind of deck where, it might be the Cloth Electrode deck of the next version of that, right? Meaning, like, a deck that people think is a bit of a meme at first, but in reality is actually just really good in a certain format. So
yeah, wait a minute. Where's the Cloth? Where's the Cloth Electrode in this event? Only 2 people on Limitless, which I assume is just day 2 people. Goldango, only 2 people. Cherim, there's 1 Cherim deck.
I will say, I played in a cup, and I played Charizard. I don't know if I played it super well, to be frank, but I played it. 2 of my losses, though, were I hit Goldango, which I don't think it's necessarily like a bad matchup for Charizard, but let's just say that if Goldango gets running, the math on Charizard hitting 260 is terrible. So it was really awkward. Especially
when Goldango has unlimited damage output. That's the big key.
And your Radiant Charizard is prized.
Always, man, I would win every game if I didn't have to prize 6 cards at the beginning of the game.
Right, that's how any game goes. Yeah,
that's how it goes. But Sean, is there anything else that you want to bring up, either in this tournament or just in general?
No, nothing else. I'm excited for Paldean Fates to become legal.
Mm-hmm.
I'm also just generally excited about rotation, which I guess here in about maybe a month or so we'll do our big rotation talk. But it's a little early.
Mm-hmm.
A little early.
It'll be happening in the future, and we hope that you're just as ready as we are here on the Metapod podcast. But that's all for today, folks. That's going to be the end of the episode. Good episode. I didn't expect to spend the first 15 minutes talking about One Piece on the Pokemon trading card game podcast, but I do think, in my honest opinion, like, I really enjoy right now in my life playing multiple card games and thinking about multiple card games, because it's really given me like a comparison about things, like how Pokemon events are run compared to One Piece events, right? And just, oh my gosh, I love Arcanine.
How good we've got it.
Yeah.
In Pokemon.
Doesn't mean really that we can't get better, right? In Pokemon, you can always improve, and there are definitely things that they need to improve on, but at least we weren't One Piece nationals. All right, that's going to be it for the episode. Thank you so much for listening to the Metapod Podcast. Pokemon Podcast revolves around the evolving meta. I'm Jake. That's Sean. And we'll see you next week. Bye.